There is a piece of vulnerability that I find I have a little resistance towards.
How can I know what I think until I see what I say? Anything that's authentic is going to be vulnerable.
You're scared of not being accepted when you reveal yourself.
In American life, schools as the last communities.
Surrender to the moment, and now you're actually optimal. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Yeah, we're out on the porch. Time change happened, so we have different
Yes,
lighting option.
that's right.
But
The weather, man,
Texas spring,
does something for me.
don't tell anyone. But don't tell anyone. The weather is always terrible in Texas,
Yeah.
right? That we'll just leave that out there. But
Absolutely not.
if you know that
Yeah.
for long stretches, it's actually beautiful, especially now.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. So we're episode 4, and we've done 3. Any thoughts about the process, just kind of getting to this moment? How's it impacting you?
Yeah. Thanks. I think, and I'm feeling that I really enjoy it. It's giving me a lot of life. The process of,
Right.
of just like working on it with you and editing and recording, it's been fun to quite simply. There is a piece of vulnerability that I find I have a little resistance towards.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's natural, right? When the camera's out and the mics are on, the electrons being observed.
Yeah. I think I get it, because I think I've been having some of the same thoughts. I'll put it out there and we can just see if it's the same. Because I was reflecting. Someone had asked me over the weekend, hey, they had listened to it, and they were very very supportive, which was awesome. And they asked me, how are you feeling about it? And I had been all day long just niggling over something, which there's that step. We talked last time about the step of doing it and getting out there. And that's powerful and exciting, all those things you said. But there's also a piece of me that's, I don't know if humility is the right word, or ego. I just don't know exactly where it lands. I'm used to thinking about what I'm doing all the time. I think I'm probably a pretty reflective person. And I'm used to doing also, not at different times in my life, maybe more than others, but not so much talking in that way. And I guess I don't want it to come across as I'm some Joe expert, that I think I know more than I do. It's in service of more like Joseph Conrad. When I was an English teacher, I had this great quote, how can I know what I think until I see what I say? And for me, it's more in that's more exploratory space, not this expert space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. That's the kind of the same way I feel, is that spirituality and yoga right now have been trending topics. They're big, big businesses and they're big markets, and people hop on there all the time because they got a life coach certification or they got their yoga teacher certification. They have that expert vibe happening, and I'm just not into that. And I've been teaching a while, but I'm still learning. And I think the greatest thing is like you're always still learning. And I love the idea of sharing the knowledge. I'm hesitant of being like the subject matter
Right.
expert or being seen as that. I'm not trying to be that. I'm here to learn and grow and share.
Yeah, I think that's it. And acknowledging all the human flaw that sits on top of that.
Yeah, because when we're thinking about like topics and what to share and what to offer, I noticed that I was like resistant to like going into the mechanics of how yoga actually works.
Right.
Or how does it actually apply to a school setting, which is exactly what we want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems like this weird block that needs to be shared. And that's why I think we're here sharing about that right now.
Yeah, or even that word you just used, block, it's resistance for sure. And there's a lot of discussion about that in the practice of yoga. And I think, as we've been thinking about it, also in the practice of school, right? And that's kind of concurrent with that, introspection I was doing about myself, was also a thought about, we're always asking students to do things, to kind of put themselves out there at some level. Or another process that's really taking a lot of time and energy now in our current model of schooling is the senior statement for the college application process. I think I wrote mine in 45 minutes. My dad just ordered me down into the basement and said, look, you got to fill these applications out. And so I dutifully went down there, and did that. Now it's this huge process. And I think part of the challenge is for the students is a little bit of what we're talking about, right? What does it mean to really put yourself out there, and how can you do that in an authentic, anything that's authentic is going to be vulnerable as well. And that's something that's difficult to manage. And I think we kind of blow through that in the schooling process a lot of times. I think kids are more open to it in the co-curricular space. Um, but I've been thinking about that as well.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I see that with students, just that they get that panic or anxiety feeling when it comes time to present in front of the class.
Yeah,
And I think that's a huge opportunity.
right. Exactly. It's that moment. Can we hang in that moment and open it up so that it can happen?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you're scared of being seen,
Yeah,
right? And you're and not so much that you're scared of being seen, but you're scared of not being accepted when you reveal yourself.
right. And we know that that's so important in that adolescent space.
Yeah, so
Right.
important. So what we do, I think successful educators or teachers creating safe spaces
Yeah.
where a student feels that they can show up as themselves. But it's not just on the teacher's part, it's the container that they're in, right? The classroom and the classroom management and the expectations of the other students and how they respond and react to whatever's being shared.
Right.
It's a complex little sort of.
Right. I think that's, and I think it's the sticking with it. And maybe I want to circle back to kind of a bigger idea that we had on the table. I think at some point in my individual practice of yoga in this Houston chapter of it, certainly before it was a series of events, or I was just
Go to a class.
I would go, and I had different body yoga studio in Santa Fe was one that I went to. I went in the Netherlands with my daughter to a practice that was led by a teacher we called the Kaiser. He was very Dutch, very intense, and so different experience, but loved going with her. But here, there was something that happened where it became not just this event, this event, this event, but a more systemic thing that I was going to do over time. And I was thinking about that because I was also thinking about just the journey of bringing yoga into school, through my role, where I have resources available to me so I can do some things or try to push a certain direction. And I think at the beginning I was doing a version of the event thing, right? And I think a lot of schools do it that way. When they're initially starting out, they'll bring in a teacher, or they'll say, okay, we're going to have yoga and PE. And maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. But the fact that it's not part of something that's more systemic and ongoing is I think the ultimate barrier to the uptake by multiple people, right?
Yeah,
You're always going to have some people that are willing to go deep. And that's we feel like something's happening that's moving us out of the even Audi community yoga. When we first started we just, okay, let's do this. We were coming out of the pandemic, and sort of we felt, hey, we think there's energy out there. We think there would be interest, and there was. And the first time we did it, there were 200 people out there on the football field. Some of that was just repressed ability to get together socially because of the pandemic restrictions. But that was a powerful force to harness. And then over time, even though I think what we were doing was like pumping up, the numbers went down because I think it settled back into the day-to-day. And just trying to push an event in there wasn't going to work. And then I think that's what at least started me on the conversations of, hey, would you think about bringing this? You talked really eloquently about that a couple episodes ago, bringing this to school. And I think it's the getting it in school and then having it unfold over time is really, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, just reflecting back, what I'm really getting from what you're sharing is like a yoga class in and of itself is great, but the true and profound and amazing effects really happen when it becomes a part of your life.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of take that example to a school with like, let's implement it into the system of school, the ways of being of school, the part of the school, not just an ancillary or auxiliary thing. That is probably what we're talking about.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
The yoga of school.
Yes. And all these, go back to the root of the word, yoking. So this connecting of things together. And that's where what I'm seeing, talking to the students that are with you in the life skills, is I think young people, they want to be productive. They want to be productive, and they're at an age, certainly, we're working with high school kids, so they're in that rite of passage, and I think there's a lot of adult opinion that is negative about that, or frustrated about that, or you got to prove it to me in order to kind of get to this place. And so when students reject things that we think are important, there's a lot of negativity about that, right? But then you get into, okay, well, why might they be rejecting it, or why might they be paying attention to other things? And it's that, is it productive for me to get to where I want to go, which is essentially being in the adult community, right? And so I think when we can say that, hey, yoga helps this, but it's really more until it gets experienced. The thing is the thing. That's when I think the takeoff happens. When then I can experience for myself, I can see the value in myself, and then I can use it.
Yeah, shout out to Jaeger.
Yeah.
In his book, he really well done, research backed, looking at the science of the brain development at that teenage year. The students are looking for social acceptance, where they matter in the totem pole.
Right.
And this is not a new concept to cultures.
No, I mean,
Society.
we were just, social acceptance was, I mean, that's the lens that you could be looking at, that opening conversation that we were having. We're worried about our social, are we being accepted in the right way for what we're trying to do, even though we can't control any of that, right?
That's such a good
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
So we're still doing it, and the students are doing it, and we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah. We're spinning past each other, and then there's moments where, oh no, we get it yoked up, back to that word, right?
Well, that kind of reminds me of my appreciation of like what I would consider a successful community.
Yeah.
A successful community, I'd like to define it as a safe space,
right,
where people can show up to be who you are.
Yes.
Come as you are. You're just no right or wrong.
Yeah, this community thing, I mean, I can go a deep dive on that, but if you ask me what is the purpose of a school like ours, I think it's ultimately, you can look at it as schools in American life, schools as the last communities. Right? If you look at in my lifetime, I grew up in a cul-de-sac in Northern Virginia that could have been right out of Wonder Years, right? So at that time in our history, we're at the post-World War II economic boom. We're at lifetime corporate employment. We're at economies where it's possible for a middle class, upper middle class family to live on one salary. We're on strong support for public schooling. We're on huge increases of people getting higher education. We're having boys clubs and police youth clubs. Church membership is up. So there's all these pieces of community that are raising young kids. Well, run the tape forward to now, 2 generations. It's not really that. And I think that a lot of that stuff has fallen away. The security of the employment, however you feel about it economically or social policy wise, but the security of that, the social institutions, the funding, the time that people have to do them, the coherence of neighborhoods, all that changing with the mobility of our society. And then, okay, well, all that functionality coming into a school. We're responsible for the ethical education. On a continuum, what we're doing is at some level spiritual, even though we wouldn't call it that. We're not a Catholic school or an Episcopal school, but when we get into our rules and values, that's a spiritual thing. We're providing the athletics, we're providing the arts, we're providing the mentors, we're providing the internships. So a lot of stuff that was out there in what made up a community, I think, is being pulled in. So it's a huge responsibility, right? But I think ultimately, what do people want? They're wanting that.
Yeah, it's a part of our health and our well-being.
If that's healthy.
Yeah, and you look at the blue zones, if you're familiar with the blue zones conversation, yes. Community is one of the main components across all blue zones.
Yeah.
Belongingness and a sense of safety.
Yes.
I had a teacher came from the ELC, took our PD day
Right.
yoga class, and that was the one statement that she said. She says, "I have a sense of safety and belongingness from this one class." The shared sense of safety and belongingness.
Yeah.
And like she was needing that, she didn't know it.
Right.
That's what it's about.
I think so. Yeah.
I love that. And so, yeah, this is a huge responsibility. I think the question for me that comes up is what are the blocks for making yoga coming back to blocks?
Yeah.
What are the blocks for making yoga part of the system, part of the school community in the modern 2025 day?
Yeah. I think some of it might be getting a little clearer about the benefit, right? And also getting out of a telling mode around the benefit. And this is also harkening back to Jaeger, getting out of a telling mode into a showing mode, kind of being in the practice and the exploration together versus, hey, I think that's a good idea for you to do.
But yeah, let me pause you on that one and
Yeah.
say, if I agree with you that we have to sell the benefit,
Right.
but the benefit in this case is experienced.
Yeah.
It's not something you put in a conference room slideshow.
That's true. Yeah.
So
I think,
there's a block there.
yeah. And I was trying to choose the right word. I don't know if I used the word sell, but I did what in my mind, what I'm trying to say is get more articulate about the potential value and then also create the conditions where that experience could take place. And then ultimately, it will either have value or not. But
Yeah, there was this Harvard researcher that a MD interviewed him, and he talked about the distinguishing parts of yoga and spirituality.
mhm,
And I think this is important. I think this might be one of the blocks to
right,
yoga being accepted systemically because it's oftentimes associated with spirituality. And the doctor was really clear about the way that he said, yoga doesn't have dogmas.
right,
It's a set of practices, mind body practices that work whether or not you believe in them.
right.
And I love that.
Yeah,
You remove the spirituality piece. Try it.
give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Yeah,
I think that would be. So then what are we asking for? Say we're talking to a board, or say we're talking to a community who's
right,
making decisions. We're asking them to try it. And they have to be open-minded,
right.
willing.
To to have the experience.
Yeah, how do we get there? How do we ensure, or how can we try to ensure that?
I think some things we're doing, right? We're walking. We didn't have the path all the way laid out when we started doing it. So I think starting, but then also being agile enough to make small shifts, not massive shifts to get more in the pocket of whatever the value is. I think that that would be one. Working all sides of the equation, maybe. You mentioned working with teachers. That's a part of it, and it's interesting. In the school, there are quite a lot of people that have found their own way to some version of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like when we summon it together, it's almost like, yeah, I can fly my yoga flag now, right? The parent space, when it all comes together, that's very powerful. I think when we've all gotten all the way there, and maybe there's something about, do the teenagers want to be all together, or do they want to be in more their peer group as they
Mm-hmm.
make that exploration? I think I've
Yeah, I mean, what I'm experiencing with the teens is that they already inherently know the value of yoga.
yeah,
Like
that's interesting.
it's like part of like the way that they already know how to operate a computer
Right.
and where we're learning,
Yeah.
right? It's part of their DNA, their understanding of life. So you don't have to sell them on yoga.
Right.
I have students randomly come by and say, "Hey, Mr. B, can you show me a stretch for my hamstring? It's super sore, super tight.
Yeah.
Athletics, whatever they're doing." Yeah, and I show them 3 stretches. They're like, "Dude, thank you," and
Yeah.
they're gone,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so they're accessing the tool, the technology.
Right.
Boom.
That would have been so different from. I mean, I can even remember back in my younger days in my 20s and my 30s, I'm not doing that. Right. And I was, super athletic and, doing all this swimming and running and triathlon. And yeah, I mean, just to be misogynist about it, yoga was for women or whatever,
There was that piece, yeah.
and it's interesting how it doesn't sound like that social structure is in place anymore.
It does
Which
not.
is great. I
Yeah.
think that's super healthy.
They get it. They get it. It's just a matter. So now, if coming back to Jaeger's idea that they want to be accepted and included and find their place on the totem pole, that's kind of where their brain function is kind of
Yeah.
honed in on right now. If the system has yoga in place, I think it'll be fine. They're the least resistant in actually
Right.
in this discussion.
Yeah.
It's about tackling or kind of confronting the open-mindedness that needs to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the block to that? I think stress.
Stress.
Right? When someone's too stressed, they don't leave very much space for new things. They're like, I have to focus on survival.
Yeah.
And I can't add in another thing. Are you kidding?
Right. Just all limbic system,
Yeah.
all allostatic load. I'm just, yeah.
Which is so funny because one of the main benefits of yoga is stress reduction.
Right.
Cortisol levels decrease.
Yes.
That's the number one thing that you'll see. When your cortisol levels are decreased, what are you able to do? Retain and engage better.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Perform a task effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. The distraction, all of that, your resources are able to be used. Yeah. Stress is a survival thing where you're looking for the escape path and trying to survive, and you're saving your breath and your calories and you're not digesting. But you reduce all that or get rid of that, and now you're actually optimal.
Right. Mind body. That I think is part of it. And I mean, is it fair to say that from an evolutionary biological point of view, when if the optimal state is balanced mind and body, and I think there's a lot of tradition that would say that's what it is, outside of yoga as well. When from an evolutionary biological point of view, when we get under stress, when the saber-toothed tiger's out there, the stress response is to shut the mind part down, don't think, and push everything into body to protect and fight or flee, even freeze. That's maybe a little more complicated. And so it's getting back to that mind-body connection, the sort of the fundamental yoking of everything, that bringing the body into it can improve the mind, and vice versa. Right?
Yeah.
School's so much in the mind, so much in the head.
Right. In my private practice, the trend that I've been seeing since the pandemic really opened this up is this idea of just the thing that I'm teaching, whether or not I'm saying these words, and oftentimes I am, is surrender.
Yeah.
Right. Surrender to the moment, feel what's happening.
Yes.
And choose from that place versus reacting and resisting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So over and over, I'll have people come see me every week, and they're basically needing that hand holding through that process.
Yes.
Okay, I hear you, but how the F do I do that?
Right.
Right. Okay, here's this situation. How do I do that? And I show them, I said, put your hands up, open your hands. This is a mudra from yoga, a gesture of surrender. I'm open and receptive to all good. I let go of holding on to this idea, this belief, this expectation that's causing me suffering.
Yes.
And I'm open and I let that go, and I can now receive and be here. Now we're able to be open-minded.
Yeah.
And then we can navigate that a little bit more successfully.
I think so.
What's coming up for you around that?
I think the thing that's coming up is just at the end of that just little simple experience there's this sort of wash of connection or and that this sort of sense of the ultimate point is to be it's not they're not going to remember your GPA, they're not going to remember maybe
to say that again, in case you didn't hear, he said the ultimate point is to be.
Yes. Yeah. And
we're human beings.
Right.
We're here on earth to be.
Yes.
We're not human doings.
Yes.
Marlon Hall said in his class Sunday, he said, some I'm going to mess it up, but he said, we're out here doing until it becomes do.
Right.
And I was like, bro, that's exactly it. We're so consumed about what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
How about just be?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that comes, that vulnerability piece and just showing up and receiving and allowing. And we're, we're asking, we're experiencing struggle, suffering from the struggle. And I often say, well, what happens if you just stop struggling?
Right.
Well, then it all of a sudden becomes easy.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll use a lot of language like struggle for control or something like that, which is not possible. So, so the release and is just to get into that balanced space, which is going to be the space that gives you the most capacity to lean into whatever you're going to lean into. I think there's and at that age, back, our students, we'll use language like as, they're finding out who they are. You're young adults now, right? And all these kind of phrases that we put on top of it. But what is happening is what's always been happening with young people moving into adulthood is there's some rite of passage there, uh, and some of it is just getting to a place where you can be okay with yourself, regardless of what someone else is going to say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, your math teacher or your dean or your principal or whatever that is.
Yeah. This is a really great quote. It's what other people think of you is none of your business. It's not. That's
Yeah.
on them. It's a projection or a reflection of what's going on in their internal space.
Yeah.
You do you. And I teach my son that, and he has it. He
does. He does.
He's really good about that.
Right.
He was putting on his new shoes this morning that I got for him, and I said they were kind of on the white silver color palette, and I said, you might need some white socks for those. And he's like, these are my black socks, and this is what I'm going to wear. And I was like, I don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, bro. Right, you got it.
Yeah.
Good. Go do you.
Yes.
You will find more ease and success and happiness that way, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
1000%. If you started giving concern about what everyone thought, life would be miserable. There's 8 billion people on the planet. You start thinking about everything that they're thinking about. What's going on here is what you're responsible for.
That's true. But if you look at most people's lives, there's a lot of energy diverted into that. I know. I can speak for myself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that we aren't respectful and we're considerate and loving and kind towards other people. We have to make sure that that's really clear here. Is to continue to be a good human, but not to be literally a concern for what other people are thinking.
Yeah, that's the word. That's the word I'm playing over in my head. Just this, because is it right to say it? I think you have to hear what other people say, and sometimes you say, "Well, I don't care about that." So implies a rejection, and I don't think that's what you're. I don't think that's what you're saying. I don't think that's what we're seeking for in the students. But it's more the both and the yoking of, hey, there's most theorists of feedback would say that even feedback that you consider to be ridiculous often has some grain of actionable intelligence in there, right? So, okay, I hear you, but I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to get emotionally flooded by whatever you feel about that. Those are all back within my wheelhouse to work on, and I'm working through that in my elder years, right? And how powerful. And maybe I worked on them in different ways when I was younger. I didn't have this tool or technology available to me. But that's the hope. That's the power that I see in it. We're helping students get to that place. That's all back around to you're good, you're whole, and you can always get better.
Yeah, I love that. The goal and I think the impetus for me and the work that I do is this desire for humans to live healthier, happier lives.
Yes.
Okay. It's from that space that we're able to make better decisions and experience a better quality of life, not only for ourselves, but for the younger generations that are coming.
Yeah.
Now, you have to be real with yourself. Where are you on that scale? How well are the things that you're doing working, or where do you have opportunity?
Hmm.
And yoga and mindfulness is a great tool and technology
Yes.
available to you that work whether or not you believe in them.
Yes.
And there are other things, you know, you could be into a hobby that helps you do that.
Yes.
You could go see a therapist and get somewhere there,
Hmm.
you know. And so I'm not saying that it's the only path,
No.
but it's a path.
Right. It's also doesn't have to be an expensive path. I think that's something that's interesting to me about it. It can be,
Yeah.
right? But um, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It can be a lifelong path. I think that's also,
It's relatively accessible.
yes,
Yeah, across the board. That's a really good point. Shout out to one of my good yoga buddies, Cesar. I'm going to have him on the podcast.
good.
He's going to dial in on this conversation
Yes.
really well. But yeah, I mean, I want to like just kind of wrap this up by saying that we're here for it. You know,
Yeah.
we're here for the support of whatever it is that needs to be happening for you to live healthier, happier lives for the benefit of us all.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
the stress path, the fear path, the worry path, the unhealthy path isn't the way.
No.
It ain't me, babe.
No, no, no. It ain't me. All right. And I think yeah, I'll put this out there too. Uh if there's anybody listening that has something that they would want us to talk about, we would love to hear about that, because that helps us. That's a feedback loop for us. Just like, okay, what's hitting, or what's coming up. So you could put it in the comments or reach out to us if you know us. That would be fantastic. And then the other thing too is we're in our sphere, but hey, we can also do this. Right? Like if you know somebody that really wants to do something like this, create some sort of space that would be a learning space and a community space. Yeah, we'd like to talk to you, because I think that we're not all the way there, but we're zoning in on what it would take to pull that off.
Yeah, in some maybe we might look back at this time and observe that we've been describing this beautiful.
Yeah, well, we have to fix it to talk about it, but it's not fixed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not fixed. It's true. It's always ever evolving, just like we are.
yeah.
Yeah.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Cheers, man.
Namaste.
Namaste.